WWE fans, brace yourself because what I'm about to tell you will blow your mind. The tribal chief is back, and he just brought the bloodline back from the dead in the most savage way imaginable. Roman Reigns returned at Night of Champions, and he wasn't alone. By his side stood Hikuleo, and together, they crushed Seth Rollins' Money in the Bank cash-in. You have to witness this destruction. Hit that subscribe button. The entire wrestling world is reeling after Roman's thunderous return. He didn't just show up, he made a statement, backed by a monstrous new enforcer in Hikuleo. As Seth Rollins tried to cash in his contract, the Bloodline stormed in like a Samoan wrecking crew, leaving chaos behind and throwing Paul Heyman's entire faction into disarray. Let's rewind. Jacob Fatu turned on Solo Sikoa at Money in the Bank, costing Jey Uso his title and handing Seth Rollins the briefcase win. The Bloodline looked like it was collapsing. But Roman Reigns doesn't break. He rebuilds. And now, with Hikuleo at his side, he's reforged the Bloodline into something even more dangerous. So the question now is, who's next to join this new reign of dominance? It all went down when the lights dropped. Rollins' music hit. The cash-in was on. Then, Roman's theme exploded through the arena. But it wasn't Reigns who emerged first. It was Hikuleo, tearing through security like paper. Then came Roman, eyes locked on Seth. Before Rollins could react, Hikuleo smashed him into the barricade with a brutal power slam. Roman picked up the briefcase, smirked, and spiked it on the steel steps. The crowd lost it. The message was clear, the Bloodline takes what it wants. This is a turning point. Hikuleo, a 6 feet 8 inches Samoan powerhouse, is Reigns' ultimate weapon. Heyman was seen backstage, frantically yelling into his phone after the attack. And what about Solo? The former heir was nowhere to be found during this rebirth. Jey's response? Cameras caught him watching from the ramp, torn, unsure. And the biggest shock? Roman never even touched Rollins. He let Hikuleo do the damage. He stood tall, reclaimed his ring, and sent a message without throwing a single punch. Roman Reigns didn't just return, he rebuilt the Bloodline in his image. With the MITB contract destroyed and a new enforcer at his side, he's declared war on Seth Rollins and everyone in his path. The king is back. And his reign will be merciless. Can Rollins bounce back? Is Jey Uso about to fall back in line? Where does Jacob Fatu stand now? Drop your thoughts below. Like. Subscribe. Turn on notifications. The Bloodline's next chapter starts now. This wasn't just a return. It was a reckoning. It was a message from the top of the mountain, you forgot who runs this. WWE fans, buckle in. Because what I'm about to tell you doesn't just change the future of Raw or SmackDown, it changes the fate of the entire WWE universe. Picture this. Seth Rollins is in the middle of the biggest moment of his career, Mr. Money in the Bank, poised to cash in at Night of Champions. The crowd is white-hot. The commentary team is screaming. The championship is within reach. Then the lights go black. No warning. No hint. Just silence. For 1 second, it felt like a technical glitch. For 2 seconds, it felt like something bigger. Then it hit. Roman Reigns' theme. Not a remix. Not a tease. The original. Tribal Chief. Pure dominance. The crowd didn't just cheer, they exploded. Grown men stood up in disbelief. Kids dropped their signs. Commentators lost their minds. But what came next made it clear, this wasn't just a return. It was a declaration of war. Before Roman even stepped onto the ramp, someone else came through the smoke. 6'8". Built like a freight train. Hair wild. Expression cold. He tore through security like they weren't even there. This was no hired gun. This wasn't backup. This was a war machine. And for those who didn't know him? They were about to. Hikuleo had arrived. Trained in Japan. Forged in chaos. Bloodline by blood. The son of Haku. The cousin of Roman. The exclamation point on the return of the bloodline. Before anyone could process what was happening, Hikuleo sprinted down the ramp and obliterated Seth Rollins with a power slam so vicious it bent the barricade. Seth's MITB briefcase hit the floor with a hollow thud. The entire arena gasped. And then, Roman walked out. Roman didn't sprint. He didn't run. He walked, slowly. Confident. Calculated. He looked down at Rollins, who was trying to breathe through the pain. He picked up the money in the bank briefcase, stared at it for a beat, and spiked it onto the steel steps. Crack. Metal shattered against metal. It wasn't just a physical act, it was psychological warfare. That briefcase wasn't just Seth's opportunity, it was every superstar's dream. Roman smashed it like garbage. And he never even needed to raise his fist. Why does this moment hit so hard? Because Roman Reigns didn't just return to get revenge or chase a belt. He returned to reset the hierarchy. This wasn't about gold. This was about control. The bloodline was crumbling. Solo betrayed. Jacob Fatu ran rogue. Jay lost the title. Paul Heyman looked like he'd lost the leash. People were starting to ask the unthinkable, was Roman done? Not a chance. He didn't come back to explain. He came back to rebuild in silence and violence. And by bringing Hikuleo, a literal destroyer, from outside WWE's current landscape, he sent one crystal-clear message to the locker room: I'm not coming to reclaim the throne. I'm coming to remake it in my image. The commentary team didn't know what to say. Michael Cole's voice cracked. Corey Graves stammered. There was no script for this. Because this wasn't in the plan. Roman's return wasn't advertised. No rumors. No leaks. No backstage photos. This was as close to a nuclear surprise as you get in modern wrestling. Even backstage, you could see panic. Cameras caught Paul Heyman pacing and shouting into his phone. Security scrambled. Other superstars looked like they'd seen a ghost. Because this wasn't just Roman. This was Roman 2.0. With a new monster at his side. With the briefcase destroyed. And with zero care for who gets hurt next. Let's lay this out. Seth Rollins was humiliated during his biggest moment. The Money in the Bank contract? Dead. Paul Heyman's faction? Shaken to the core. Solo Sikoa? Missing. Jey Uso? Watching silently from the ramp, torn and unsure. Jacob Fatu? AWOL after betraying Solo. And standing tall above it all? Roman Reigns, calm, smirking, dangerous. If this was a chessboard, Roman didn't just make a move. He flipped the board, set it on fire, and walked away without looking back. Now that the shock has settled, here's what we're left wondering: what's Hikuleo's mission? Is he the new Solo? Or something darker? Why didn't Roman strike Rollins? Is that restraint, or just cold strategy? Where does this leave Heyman? Still the wise man, or out in the cold? Is Jey Uso about to fold, or fight back? And maybe the biggest question of all, if this is just the beginning, what's the endgame? Make no mistake. Roman Reigns didn't return for nostalgia. He didn't come back to feud or to get revenge. He came back to erase the cracks. To take the broken bones of the bloodline and rebuild them into something worse, something unstoppable. And now, the locker room is in freefall. No one's safe. The rules don't matter anymore. Because the tribal chief isn't playing the game. He's rewriting it. This isn't just a recap. This is a warning. If you're watching this, you're watching history reform in real time. So hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because what comes next is going to shake WWE to its core. And don't just sit there, drop a comment. Who do you think Roman recruits next? Can Seth recover from this? Where is Solo? And what the hell is Heyman really planning? The bloodline isn't broken. It's reborn. And it just declared war. WWE fans around the world are waking up to shockwaves following one of the most unexpected and disruptive moments in recent wrestling history. In what can only be described as a hostile takeover, Roman Reigns made his return to WWE at Night of Champions and brought with him not just a warning shot, but a weapon. His name is Hikuleo, and together, the two left Seth Rollins broken, Paul Heyman speechless, and the rest of the roster scrambling to make sense of what just happened. The atmosphere inside the arena had already reached a fever pitch. Seth Rollins, briefcase in hand, stood at the precipice of greatness. With the championship within his grasp, the crowd roared as he made his way down the ramp. This was supposed to be his crowning moment, the culmination of a long and grueling path back to the top. Commentary framed the moment like history was being written. But history had other plans. Without warning, the entire arena went dark. No lead-up. No music cues. No cryptic lights or countdowns. Just the lights cutting out like a power failure had hit the building. For 6 seconds, the WWE Universe was left in darkness. Then came the sound. A single beat. The bass hit. And Roman Reigns' unmistakable theme echoed through the stadium. It was not just a return. It was an ambush wrapped in spectacle. People in the front rows gasped. Others shouted, unsure whether they were hearing what they thought they were hearing. In a business where surprises are increasingly hard to pull off, this one was pulled off with brutal precision. But even then, the shock wasn't over. Because it wasn't Roman who walked through the smoke first. It was someone bigger. Meaner. Hungrier. Hikuleo. For fans not deeply familiar with the global wrestling scene, the name may have sounded like just another big man in a long line of WWE powerhouses. But for those in the know, this wasn't just a debut. It was a calculated insertion of violence. Hikuleo is a known enforcer from his days in New Japan Pro Wrestling, a man who has spent years carving a reputation as someone who doesn't just defeat opponents, he destroys them. A towering presence standing nearly 7 feet tall with raw Samoan strength and Japanese precision, his arrival is not an addition to the bloodline. It's a resurrection. As Seth Rollins prepared to cash in the briefcase and seize his shot at glory, Hikuleo appeared like a shadow rising out of the mist. No pageantry. No showboating. He sprinted down the ramp with nothing but destruction in his eyes. Security didn't even slow him down. He ran through them like they were props, hurling one guard into the barricade and shoving another straight through the announce table partition. Fans near ringside stood frozen, unsure whether this was scripted or a legitimate breakdown of control. Then came the collision. Hikuleo grabbed Rollins mid-step and drove him spine first into the barricade with a running power slam that would have crushed lesser men outright. Rollins lay sprawled across the floor, briefcase dropped beside him, face contorted in shock and pain. The referee, confused and yelling, waved toward the timekeeper's area, but before any decisions could be made, Roman Reigns stepped through the curtain. Slow. Controlled. Focused. The tribal chief returned not like a man trying to reclaim something lost, but like one who never left and was simply correcting a mistake. He walked past Hikuleo, past the chaos, and locked eyes with Rollins. He didn't speak. He didn't bark orders. He didn't even raise a fist. Instead, he picked up the money in the bank briefcase, looked at it the way a predator looks at prey, and then without any hesitation, spiked it against the steel steps. The sound echoed like a gunshot across the arena. This wasn't a return of a champion. It was the return of a tyrant. And every person watching, live or at home, realized something very quickly: the bloodline wasn't done. It was just getting started again, meaner, leaner, and more dangerous. What followed was a mix of chaos and confusion. Paul Heyman was seen yelling into his phone backstage, pacing like a man who had just lost control of the empire he helped build. Several producers rushed to guerrilla position. Referees surrounded the ringside area but didn't dare get too close. And in all this madness, Rollins, one of WWE's top stars, was left clutching his ribs, coughing, and staring up at a ceiling that had never looked so far away. Roman stood tall. Hikuleo stood beside him. And nobody else dared move. This is what made the moment so much more than a simple return. Roman didn't interfere in the match. He didn't attack Rollins directly. He didn't say a word. But the implication was loud enough to shake every locker room wall. In that moment, WWE was reminded that Roman Reigns doesn't just lead a faction, he runs a kingdom. And he's back to make sure no one else forgets it again. What does this mean for Seth Rollins? For the MITB contract? For Heyman's loyalty? And most pressingly, what does this mean for the future of WWE? Because if one thing became clear in that arena, it's that Roman Reigns didn't come back for a title. He came back for control. He came back for legacy. And he came back to finish what he started. In the hours following Night of Champions, WWE social platforms exploded. The hashtag Roman Returns trended worldwide within minutes. Videos of the ambush went viral almost immediately, with clips showing multiple angles of the attack and reactions from stunned fans. Wrestlers, both current and retired, chimed in online. Some praised the moment as one of the most well-executed returns in modern WWE. Others expressed concern, confusion, even fear. Several superstars posted cryptic messages, one of which, from an anonymous top-tier talent, read only, "We are not safe anymore." This isn't an exaggeration. It's the new reality. Hikuleo is not a temporary bodyguard. He's not a second-tier lackey. He's a statement of intent. A message from Roman to the WWE roster: you thought it was over. You thought the bloodline had cracked. But I never fall. I rebuild. And now I've got a monster on my side. As the dust settles on Night of Champions, there are no easy answers. Rollins has not been seen since the attack. WWE Medical has not released an official injury report, but eyewitnesses said he had trouble walking up the ramp, flanked by 2 referees. Heyman has not made an official statement. The MITB briefcase is in pieces. And Roman Reigns, once again, holds the narrative in the palm of his hand. This isn't just a return story. It's a hostile regime change. One that WWE has no choice but to acknowledge. The bloodline wasn't destroyed. It was reforged. And that should terrify everyone. The moment had been building all night, but no one knew it. Seth Rollins stood at the top of the ramp, briefcase in hand, adrenaline coursing through his veins. The crowd was electric. This was it. Everything Rollins had fought for, every betrayal, every injury, every sleepless night, had led to this. The perfect opening. The champion was vulnerable. The referee was ready. The bell hadn't rung yet, but momentum was already on Seth's side. He had the building in the palm of his hand. The camera panned across the crowd, thousands on their feet, chanting. The commentary team shouted over each other, riding the chaos with barely restrained excitement. This was more than a cash-in. It was a moment in WWE history being written live. Then the lights cut out. Instant black. The crowd gasped. A few screamed. The arena plunged into total darkness for a full 5 seconds. No flashes, no flickers, just the sound of people realizing something was wrong. And then, that sound. Roman Reigns' theme hit like a thunderclap. The drums. The tribal beat. That low, growling rhythm that had once signaled the arrival of WWE's most dominant champion in a generation. Gasps turned into roars. Hands shot into the air. The camera shook slightly from the sheer volume of the reaction. No one saw it coming. No leaks. No dirt sheets. No teases. Nothing. Until that moment. But what happened next changed the meaning of Roman's music forever. Because it wasn't Roman who emerged from the tunnel. It was Hikuleo. He stepped through the curtain like a storm-given form, tall, broad, and furious. His braids whipped as he turned his head from side to side, eyes scanning the stunned crowd. The lighting was red and black, casting shadows across his shoulders and face. For many in the arena, this was their first look at Hikuleo. A few scattered chants broke out, hardcore fans who knew exactly what was coming. He didn't raise a hand. He ran. Like a missile, Hikuleo exploded down the ramp. 3 security guards tried to intercept him, rookie mistake. He flung the first into the LED board, shoved the second into the ring apron, and shoulder-checked the third hard enough to knock him into the timekeeper's area. The commentary team was stunned. They fumbled for words. What is happening? That's Hikuleo. What the hell is he doing here? Seth Rollins had barely registered what was happening before Hikuleo was on top of him. He grabbed Rollins by the midsection and launched him into the barricade with a running power slam that shook the steel. Rollins folded on impact, gasping for air, one arm twitching as he rolled over. The MITB briefcase hit the floor with a thud, inches from the timekeeper's feet. Then came Roman. He didn't rush. He didn't posture. He walked. Deliberate. Eyes locked on Rollins. No emotion. No fire. Just control. The tribal chief was back, and he looked untouchable. Hikuleo moved aside, his job done, as Roman stepped past the fallen security guards, past the broken barricade, past Seth Rollins coughing on the mat. Roman reached down and picked up the briefcase. He stared at it. The object that, moments ago, symbolized everything Rollins had earned. Every ounce of resilience, every match, every win. Roman looked at it like it was beneath him. And then, he turned to the steel steps. Without hesitation, he lifted the case high and spiked it against the steps. The noise was immediate and sickening. Metal against metal. Echoes bounced through the arena. The briefcase cracked. The latch popped. It tumbled to the floor, broken and useless. Roman didn't speak. He didn't gloat. He just turned and stared at Rollins, who was now on his knees, stunned and furious. But Roman didn't lay a finger on him. He just nodded to Hikuleo and walked away. That moment, right there, was the real power play. Roman didn't need to fight to assert dominance. He let Hikuleo do the damage. He let the image of a shattered MITB briefcase tell the story. He left Rollins with nothing but humiliation and a bruised ego. The camera cut to the ramp. Roman stood with Hikuleo at his side, eyes still locked on the ring. No words. No celebration. Just silence and power. Backstage, cameras scrambled to catch reactions. Paul Heyman was on his phone, pacing, sweating, visibly distressed. He barked orders to someone off camera. Other superstars peeked out of locker room doors, whispering. The entire backstage environment had shifted. No one had expected Roman to return. No one had ever heard of Hikuleo appearing under a WWE banner. And yet here they were, together, united, and devastating. The Bloodline had not only returned, it had evolved. Fans at home took to social media in waves. Theories erupted. Freeze frames of the attack flooded Twitter and Reddit. Conspiracy posts popped up instantly. How long had Roman been planning this? Was Heyman still in the loop? Was Solo out? Was this a warning? But the most chilling takeaway wasn't the brutality of the ambush. It was the precision. Roman didn't just return. He rewrote the entire power structure of the WWE with one entrance and no punches thrown. He robbed Seth of his opportunity, shattered his momentum, and replaced chaos with order, his order. And by bringing in Hikuleo, he sent a message deeper than any promo could deliver. The Bloodline isn't just a family anymore. It's a machine. And machines don't feel. They function. They destroy. The camera lingered on the ring one last time. Rollins leaned against the steps, his face bruised and bloodied, staring at the broken briefcase beside him. Above him, on the ramp, Roman turned to the camera and smirked. The feed faded to black. No logo. No commentary. Just the silence of a wrestling world that had just been reminded who runs it. For many WWE fans, the name Hikuleo was unfamiliar, at least until the moment he tore through security like it was made of cardboard. But for those who've been watching closely, especially outside the WWE bubble, Hikuleo's arrival is not just shocking, it's seismic. This wasn't a debut designed to introduce a newcomer. This was an arrival meant to intimidate, to fracture the walls of the current WWE structure, and to announce that Roman Reigns has found a new weapon of destruction. The man now walking at Roman's side isn't an understudy. He's a monster forged in chaos, trained far away from WWE's development system, and loyal not to contracts or titles, but to blood. So who is Hikuleo? The answer begins with his roots. Born in 1991 as Talafifida, Hikuleo is the adopted son of legendary wrestler Haku, also known as Mang, a man often described by his peers as one of the toughest to ever set foot in a wrestling ring. Haku wasn't just respected. He was feared. Stories of his street fights are the stuff of locker room legend. Hikuleo carries not just Haku's name, but his reputation. But it doesn't stop there. Hikuleo is part of the extended Anoa'i family tree, the same bloodline that produced Roman Reigns, the Usos, Solo Sikoa, Yokozuna, Rikishi, and The Rock. It's not marketing when they say the bloodline. It's literal. It's generational. And Hikuleo might be the most physically imposing of them all. He stands 6 feet 8 inches tall and weighs over 260 pounds. His wingspan is terrifying. His presence is undeniable. But what makes him so uniquely dangerous is not just his build, it's where he was forged. Unlike most WWE superstars, Hikuleo didn't cut his teeth in NXT. He wasn't softened by the Performance Center or filtered through the WWE machine. Instead, he trained in Japan, New Japan Pro Wrestling, to be specific. In NJPW, there are no soft landings. There are no protected finishes. There is only strong style. The hits are real. The conditioning is brutal. The expectations are sky high. It is a wrestling school where pain is part of the curriculum, and toughness isn't optional, it's survival. Hikuleo thrived there. He debuted under the NJPW banner in 2017 as part of Bullet Club, one of the most feared and influential factions in modern wrestling history. At first, he was quiet, a big man in the background. But slowly, methodically, he developed into an enforcer. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't a promo guy. He was the guy they called when someone needed to be silenced. Over time, he gained a reputation, not just big, not just strong, but deliberate. He didn't hit because he could. He hit when it meant something. He learned pacing. Ring IQ. Power restraint. His time in Japan didn't just make him tougher. It made him smarter. That discipline was on full display when he arrived at Night of Champions. He didn't showboat. He didn't scream. He ran straight at the threat, Seth Rollins, and neutralized it. No wasted motion. No dramatics. Just violence with purpose. The choice to bring in Hikuleo wasn't random. Roman Reigns, whether you love or hate him, is a tactician. He doesn't surround himself with hype. He surrounds himself with results. When the Usos wavered, he replaced them with Solo. Now, as Solo's loyalties come into question and the original bloodline begins to fracture, Roman's gone offshore, into the unforgiving waters of NJPW, to find his next soldier. And make no mistake, Hikuleo is not here to play second fiddle. He's here to clean house. This new version of the bloodline isn't about family dinners or tribal rituals. It's about dominance. Roman didn't bring back the old gang. He didn't try to patch things up with Jay. He brought in a giant from the wild. One who isn't distracted by history or loyalty. One who doesn't blink. WWE has never had a Hikuleo. They've had giants before. They've had monsters. But few come with this mix of pedigree, training, and raw purpose. Think about what this means in terms of matchups. Gunther? Hikuleo could go toe-to-toe. Bobby Lashley? Hikuleo has the size to neutralize him. Even someone like Brock Lesnar, who has torn through nearly everyone on the roster, wouldn't have an easy night against a man this size, especially one trained to absorb punishment and keep walking. And that's what should concern the rest of the WWE locker room. Hikuleo isn't green. He isn't a rookie. He's a weapon. And Roman Reigns just added him to his arsenal. Fans have already started speculating about how deep this alliance runs. Did Roman recruit him months ago? Was this always part of the plan post-MITB? Or did Roman make the call after Jacob Fatu's betrayal, realizing he needed someone outside the family circle to restore order? Whatever the answer, it's working. The psychological effect of Hikuleo's debut cannot be overstated. He didn't just beat up Rollins. He created silence. In a sport where noise equals power, Hikuleo introduced a new kind of authority, the kind that doesn't need words, doesn't need fireworks, and doesn't need backstory. Just impact. Just fear. Just silence. And when paired with Roman's calm, calculated demeanor, the dynamic is chilling. Roman Reigns doesn't want cheers. He doesn't want allies. He wants obedience. And Hikuleo is the embodiment of that vision. This moment wasn't about introducing a new character. It was about Roman saying, "I'm done playing by your expectations." He's no longer leaning on nostalgia. He's building something new. And with Hikuleo standing behind him, a new era has begun. An era not of unity, but control. Not of family, but force. Not of trust, but fear. As fans scramble to understand what just happened, one thing is clear: Hikuleo didn't arrive to make friends. He arrived to finish what Roman started. And the rest of WWE is about to find out what that means. To understand the chaos that erupted at Night of Champions, you have to go back. Not just to the moment Roman Reigns returned. Not even to the moment Seth Rollins fell. You have to trace the roots of the bloodline, the rise, the glory, the collapse, and now, the resurrection. The bloodline didn't start as a faction. It started as a family drama, one man at the top, forcing those closest to him to either fall in line or fall away. It was never just about power in the ring. It was about control over blood. It began in 2020. Roman Reigns returned at SummerSlam that year after a long hiatus, with a new attitude, a new edge, and one simple mission: to reclaim his place at the head of the table. What followed was a brutal confrontation with Jey Uso, a storyline that didn't just define Roman's heel turn, it gave it depth. Jey wasn't just an opponent. He was family. And Roman didn't just want to beat him. He wanted him to bend. To acknowledge. To obey. The match at Clash of Champions was personal. Emotional. Violent. Roman didn't just win. He forced Jey to submit, not with wrestling moves, but with psychological dominance. Tears were shed. Real ones. The crowd didn't know how to feel. That wasn't a match. It was a family feud televised. From that moment on, the bloodline was born. Jey Uso bent the knee. Then came Jimmy. Then came Paul Heyman, the manipulative brain behind every major empire in WWE's modern era. And then came Solo Sikoa, the silent assassin, the younger brother who didn't need words to prove loyalty. He showed up when it mattered, made an impact immediately, and cemented the feeling that the bloodline wasn't just a story, it was a regime. Together, they dominated. Roman held the Universal title. Then the WWE title. He unified them. Jey and Jimmy became multi-time tag team champions. Solo wrecked everything in his path. The entrance music changed. The aesthetic changed. WWE revolved around them. Everything else felt like filler. But like every empire, cracks began to form. Jay's loyalty never sat right with him. Deep down, the audience could see it. He was the heart of the group, but his heart was torn. He had bled for Roman, cried for him, obeyed him. But it wasn't respect. It was fear. And fear doesn't last. Jimmy was the spark. The moment Jimmy turned on Roman at Night of Champions 2023, it shocked the world. It felt like a brother reaching his breaking point. The super kick heard around the world didn't just land on Roman's chin. It fractured the foundation of the bloodline. What followed was months of betrayal, infighting, manipulation. Paul Heyman tried to keep control, whispering into Solo's ear, gaslighting Jay, begging Roman to act. Roman, however, remained cool. Detached. But that detachment was exactly the problem. The cracks widened. Jay walked out. Jimmy vanished. Solo began to question. Then came Money in the Bank 2024. The turning point. Jey Uso had clawed his way back into title contention. With the WWE Universe behind him, he looked ready to finally carve out a path for himself, independent of Roman's shadow. It wasn't about the bloodline anymore. It was about legacy. But it never goes that way in WWE. Because just as Jay looked poised to capture gold, Jacob Fatu arrived. Exploding through the crowd like a human wrecking ball, Jacob Fatu, another bloodline relative known for his devastating work in MLW, attacked Solo Sikoa. It was stunning. Up to that point, Solo had been the true loyalist. The quiet killer. The protector of the bloodline legacy. So why would Jacob attack him? At first, the answer wasn't clear. Was it a message to Roman? A personal grudge? A power grab? All we knew was that the interference cost Jay the title. And handed Seth Rollins the win. Jay stood in the center of the ring afterward, staring at the mat, crushed. Not just because he lost, but because the betrayal came from within. Again. The bloodline didn't just collapse that night. It imploded. No one trusted anyone. Heyman looked like a man playing chess with the pieces missing. Solo didn't appear again. Jacob Fatu disappeared into the night. And Roman? He vanished. No promos. No Instagram posts. No cryptic messages. He simply evaporated. For weeks, fans speculated. Was Roman finished? Had he walked away? Was this the end of an era? But those who understood his character knew better. Roman doesn't retreat. He recalibrates. When others panic, Roman plans. And now, the result of that silence has become clear. The return at Night of Champions was not a knee-jerk reaction. It was a tactical strike. The bloodline, as we knew it, was dead. But Roman didn't come to mourn it. He came to resurrect it. But not with the same pieces. He didn't bring back Jimmy. He didn't call on Jay. He didn't even stand beside Solo. He brought in someone new. Someone outside the system. Hikuleo. By doing this, Roman sent a chilling message. Not just to his enemies, but to his family. I don't need you. I don't need your approval, your loyalty, your history. I build my empire with or without you. And that, perhaps, is the coldest twist in the story of the bloodline. Because now, it's not a story of tradition. It's a story of power. Roman has severed the emotional core of the bloodline and reforged it as a war machine. He is no longer the head of the table. He is the table. And Hikuleo is the hammer. This chapter is not about redemption arcs or family reunions. It's about domination. The resurrection of the bloodline is complete. And now, it's coming for everything. Paul Heyman has long been considered one of the most dangerous minds in professional wrestling. A master manipulator. A deal maker. A kingmaker. He has managed ECW revolutionaries, Next Big Things, and wrestling royalty. But after Roman Reigns' return at Night of Champions, it became clear that, for the first time in years, Paul Heyman is no longer in control. Let's rewind. For nearly 3 years, Heyman was the quiet architect behind the Bloodline's dominance. He wasn't the brute force. He wasn't in the matches. But his fingerprints were all over the psychology, the betrayal, the tactics, the timing. It was Heyman who whispered strategy into Roman's ear. Heyman who sold the fear. Heyman who stood by his matches turned into statements of power. But when Roman disappeared after the collapse at Money in the Bank, Heyman was left holding the remnants of a broken empire. Solo Sikoa was off the grid. Jacob Fatu had gone rogue. Jay and Jimmy Uso were done. Roman was silent. And Heyman, once the wise man of the most dominant force in WWE history, looked like a man trying to plug holes in a sinking ship. There were whispers that Heyman was forming a new faction behind the scenes. Unconfirmed reports suggested that he had been quietly making calls to talent across brands. Superstars with a grudge. Former clients. Free agents. Some said he had something brewing with Jacob Fatu. Others speculated that he was trying to realign with Solo and repackage the Bloodline without Roman. But if that was the case, Night of Champions destroyed it. Roman's return didn't just reset the narrative, it shattered Heyman's position entirely. And it did so in the most ruthless way possible. Without a single word. When Hikuleo appeared beside Roman, when the MITB briefcase was destroyed, and when Rollins was left broken, Heyman was nowhere to be seen. And that's telling. If he were still in Roman's inner circle, he would have been there. He would have walked down the ramp beside them. He would have held the championship high, screamed into the camera, and sold the moment like a prophet vindicated. But instead, cameras caught him backstage, alone, panicked, pacing. The footage is brief, but it says everything. Heyman with his phone pressed to his ear, yelling at someone unseen, sweat beading on his forehead. Not calm. Not measured. Desperate. This wasn't the wise man guiding the tribal chief. This was a man watching his influence vanish in real time. And here's where it gets even more complicated. Paul Heyman doesn't do useless. If he senses he's been replaced, if he realizes he's no longer valued, he doesn't beg. He pivots. And that means WWE should be bracing for a very dangerous version of Heyman, a man with nothing left to lose and everything to rebuild. The question now becomes, who does Heyman align with next? Does he try to claw his way back into Roman's trust? Does he double-cross him and form a counter-bloodline? Or does he step away entirely and create something new from the ashes? Let's look at the possibilities. Option 1, Heyman realigns with Roman. Unlikely. Roman has never tolerated weakness. And Heyman, seen sweating and scrambling, now looks like a liability. Reigns has Hikuleo, a physical monster who doesn't need Heyman's guidance. What does Paul offer now? Strategy? Roman has always trusted his own. Loyalty? Roman's not asking for that anymore. He's demanding results. Option 2, Heyman creates a new faction to counter Reigns. This is the most likely path. Heyman thrives on chaos. He made his career on rebellion and disruption. If he feels Roman has cast him aside, the logical move is to strike back. He already has potential tools. Jacob Fatu remains unaccounted for. We know Heyman respects him. There's history, there's menace, and there's motive. Then there's Solo Sikoa. His absence is no coincidence. He's not injured. He's not suspended. He's in limbo, and Heyman may be the only one with the history and influence to bring him back into the spotlight. Heyman molded Solo into a silent killer. If he can convince him that Roman has moved on, that Solo was replaced by Hikuleo, he might just turn that loyalty into revenge. There's also buzz that Heyman has been quietly keeping tabs on outside talent, men and women who don't fit into Roman's mold but are hungry, angry, and willing to tear the system apart. Heyman is not above building a Frankenstein army. And it may be the only card he has left. Option 3, Heyman flips entirely and aligns with Seth Rollins. This one's bold. But not impossible. Rollins just suffered the most humiliating moment of his career. He had the Money in the Bank contract in hand. He had the perfect opportunity. And it was ripped from him by Roman and Hikuleo. No words. Just impact. Heyman aligning with Rollins would be poetic revenge. The man who once called Roman the greatest of all time would now guide his greatest threat. It would be shocking. It would be personal. It would be unpredictable. And it would give Heyman something far more valuable than a championship. It would give him vengeance. Regardless of which path Heyman takes, one thing is clear, he's not going quietly. He never does. He's not a wrestler. He's not a fighter. He's a strategist, a manipulator, a survivor. And right now, survival means adapting to a new reality. One where Roman Reigns doesn't need him. One where the bloodline has outgrown the man who helped build it. And one where Heyman has to decide if he'll watch it thrive from the sidelines, or destroy it from the inside. As Roman Reigns made his return at Night of Champions and Hikuleo stepped into the spotlight, there was one name conspicuously missing from every camera angle, every reaction shot, and every frame of chaos: Solo Sikoa. Not a mention. Not a backstage sighting. Not a single appearance. And that absence speaks volumes. Solo Sikoa has been a central figure in the Bloodline's narrative. The quiet enforcer. The cold operator. The younger brother who did the damage no one else wanted to do. When Roman needed order, Solo brought pain. When the Usos started questioning their roles, Solo answered with silence and violence. He was the muscle behind Roman's dominance, and for a long time, the only one who didn't waver. So where is he? The last time fans saw Solo Sikoa, it was at Money in the Bank. The event that fractured the bloodline for good. Jey Uso had momentum, Paul Heyman was fidgeting ringside, and Roman's influence was slipping. Then came the twist no one expected: Jacob Fatu attacked Solo. In one of the most chaotic segments of the year, Fatu, wild, violent, unpredictable, ambushed Solo in the middle of the match. It wasn't Jey who turned. It wasn't a setup against Roman. It was family-on-family betrayal, raw and unscripted. Fatu smashed Solo into the post, wrecked him on the floor, and disappeared just as quickly as he appeared. The attack cost Jey the match, but the emotional fallout centered on Solo. Not just physically, but symbolically, Solo had been discarded. Used. Abandoned. And since then, radio silence. No backstage appearances. No promos. No social media posts. No updates from WWE. It's not an injury angle. It's not a suspension. It's something else entirely. It's isolation. And the timing of Roman's return, with a new enforcer at his side, only deepens the mystery. Because when Roman first brought Solo into the bloodline, it was a calculated move. The Usos were wavering. Roman needed someone young, raw, and loyal. Solo fit the role perfectly. He didn't talk. He didn't ask questions. He made statements with his hands. But now, Roman has replaced him. Without hesitation. Hikuleo isn't a similar asset. He's a direct upgrade in size, reach, and threat level. Roman didn't need a second Solo. He needed a bigger one. A colder one. One without family history pulling at him from the inside. And so, Solo, once the next in line, has been left out entirely. Was it punishment? Was it strategic exile? Or was it Solo's choice? We have to consider all angles. If this is part of Roman's plan, it's consistent with his cold leadership. He used the Usos until they broke, then cut them off. He used Heyman until he saw weakness, then distanced himself. Why wouldn't he do the same to Solo? But maybe it's not just strategy. Maybe it's deeper. Maybe Solo saw the betrayal coming. Maybe Jacob Fatu's attack was a warning, not a betrayal. It's not hard to imagine a version of this story where Solo starts questioning the entire bloodline system. He's watched his brothers fall, his cousin vanish, his mentor panic. Then he gets attacked by another family member out of nowhere, and nobody steps in to help, not Roman, not Heyman. What if Solo realized he wasn't next in line? What if he realized he was just next to be used? There's also a dangerous possibility: Solo isn't missing. He's waiting. Fans who know Solo's style understand his patience. He doesn't need to talk. He doesn't chase attention. When he strikes, it's calculated and quiet. He's not the kind of wrestler to storm into a ring demanding answers. He's the one who shows up when someone least expects it, and ends their night. If that's where this is going, WWE may be building toward a seismic clash, Solo versus Roman. It's the natural next step in the Bloodline story. The original idea of family loyalty is gone. Roman has rewritten the terms. He's replaced bonds with fear. Solo, who once took the pin for Roman, who fought his own brothers for him, is now watching from the shadows. And that's dangerous. Because Solo isn't flashy. He's a bruiser. He's methodical. He's what Roman used to be before he wore suits and sat on thrones. And the audience remembers. They remember Solo smashing Sheamus through tables. They remember him taking out Drew McIntyre. They remember how, when everyone else had doubts, Solo never hesitated. So imagine what happens when he turns that same loyalty into vengeance. There's also a possibility that Solo is being courted. By Heyman. By Jacob Fatu. By others who see Roman's empire cracking and are trying to build something new out of the rubble. Heyman, in particular, would make sense. He's lost his grip on Roman. He needs leverage. Solo could be that. Convince him that Roman discarded him. Show him that Hikuleo replaced him without a second thought. Remind him that he was never family, just a tool. That's the kind of narrative Heyman excels at. That's the kind of betrayal that fuels wrestling's best turns. And if Solo accepts it, the ripple effects would be massive. Because Roman's biggest threat was never Seth Rollins. It was never Cody Rhodes. It was never Brock Lesnar. It was the man he trained to be his shadow. The one who knows every move before it's made. The one who never needed the spotlight. Solo Sikoa. If he returns, it won't be for a handshake. It'll be for a reckoning. Jacob Fatu wasn't supposed to be a factor. At least, not yet. For over a year, wrestling insiders had speculated about his WWE debut. Rumors swirled about contract negotiations, creative meetings, and whether or not WWE would greenlight someone with a history as wild and unpredictable as his. Then Money in the Bank happened. And Jacob Fatu didn't debut with a match. He debuted with a betrayal. In the middle of one of the most emotionally charged matches of the year, Jey Uso challenging for the title, Solo Sikoa holding the line. Fatu stormed in from the crowd like a natural disaster in human form. He didn't go after Jey. He didn't target Roman. He went after Solo. The moment was fast, violent, and jarring. Fatu leveled Solo with a jumping superkick and then flattened him with a Samoan drop on the steel ramp. No warning. No setup. No reason. The crowd went silent before erupting into disbelief. Even the commentary team struggled to catch up. Wait, who is that? Is that Jacob Fatu? What is he? Why Solo? Within 30 seconds, the entire match dynamic changed. Solo was out. Jey was distracted. And Seth Rollins capitalized, snatching the Money in the Bank briefcase and walking away with a stolen win. But the real story wasn't the victory. It was the arrival of Jacob Fatu, and the chaos he left behind. Because unlike other wrestlers who show up with brand colors or entrance music or alliances, Fatu brought only one thing: destruction. And he vanished just as quickly as he appeared. No promo. No tweet. No backstage segment. Nothing. He arrived, made his statement, and disappeared into the shadows. Now, as Roman Reigns returns with Hikuleo at his side, Fatu's presence looms larger than ever. So who is Jacob Fatu? The short answer: a threat. The long answer: maybe the most dangerous wildcard WWE has seen in a decade. Jacob Fatu is the son of Sam Fatu, aka the Tonga Kid, and the nephew of Rikishi. He's part of the same sprawling Anoa'i family tree that includes Roman, the Usos, Yokozuna, and now Hikuleo by extension. But Jacob didn't take the traditional WWE path. He forged his name in the independent circuit, most notably in MLW, Major League Wrestling, where he became one of the longest-reigning world champions in the company's history. In MLW, he wasn't a gimmick. He wasn't a character. He was a force. His in-ring style is rare. A combination of high-impact brutality, shocking agility, and a kind of violent unpredictability that makes every match feel dangerous. He doesn't wrestle clean. He wrestles like he's fighting for survival. And now he's here, somewhere inside the WWE system, and no one knows who he's aligned with or what he's planning next. What made his debut so unnerving was its ambiguity. He didn't side with Jay. He didn't target Roman. He attacked Solo, perhaps the most loyal member of the Bloodline. Without explanation. And that leaves the door wide open for speculation. Was he sent by Roman? That theory died at Night of Champions. If Jacob was Roman's backup plan, Hikuleo's debut rendered him obsolete. Roman doesn't hedge bets. He selects, and he eliminates. And Roman chose Hikuleo. So what's the motive? Was Fatu acting out of jealousy? Trying to make a name for himself? Or was it something deeper? It's possible, likely even, that Jacob's attack on Solo was a message. Not to Roman. Not to WWE fans. To the family. Maybe Jacob sees himself as the rightful heir to the Bloodline throne. Maybe he looks at Roman, Heyman, Solo, and the rest and sees weakness, infighting, softness. Maybe he's here to purge it all. If that's the case, his absence isn't cowardice. It's strategy. Because while Roman builds his new bloodline with Hikuleo, Jacob Fatu is the one variable no one can predict. He doesn't speak publicly. He doesn't play by the rules. He's not under anyone's command. And that makes him the most dangerous man in the company. Think about it, Fatu is the only family member who has attacked another family member without immediate consequence. Roman didn't respond. Heyman didn't intervene. Solo hasn't been seen since. And now, the door is wide open for Jacob to walk back in, when he chooses, not when creative needs it. That freedom makes him terrifying. But here's where things get even more complicated. What if Jacob Fatu isn't alone? There are whispers. Unconfirmed but growing louder, that Fatu has been in contact with other Anoa'i cousins, especially those who didn't fit Roman's vision of the bloodline. Wrestlers like Tama Tonga, Tangaloa. Others from the New Japan and indie circuits who felt iced out when Roman took the spotlight for himself. What if Jacob isn't building a solo rebellion? What if he's building a rival empire? A second bloodline. Unfiltered. Unhinged. And completely out of WWE's control. This scenario, while extreme, is not implausible. Wrestling history thrives on faction wars, and Roman's version of the bloodline is cleaner, more calculated, more structured. Fatu's vision? Pure chaos. One thing is certain, WWE can't ignore Jacob Fatu. They tried that after Money in the Bank. They thought he'd just vanish. That the buzz would fade. But with every move Roman makes, Fatu becomes more relevant. Because he was there before Hikuleo. He made a move before Roman did. And he struck at the heart of loyalty, Solo Sikoa. He didn't just interfere in a match. He flipped the board. And now, he's watching the pieces move. The question isn't if Jacob Fatu returns. It's when. And when he does, he's not coming back to play second fiddle. He's coming to burn everything down.